So in 2020, I decided to build my own swimming pool in my back garden, and it's now 2026 and it's been 4 years since I finished. And as it's still going strong, I thought I'd finally put together a YouTube video of the whole build and try to explain my thought process and what the hell was going on in my brain during this period. But because I did decide to follow these intrusive thoughts that I could do this, I've been able to enjoy this in one of the most mental heat waves the UK's ever seen. So here's how I built my own swimming pool in the UK. So roll it back to 2020. We all know what happened that year. People were panic buying toilet roll, baking banana bread, and doing stupid dances on TikTok. Whereas my coping mechanism for all of this was, why don't I build a swimming pool in my back garden? And as you can see from these clips that look like they've been recorded on a potato, because that was the only camera I had back then, I had absolutely no idea how to build a pool, how a pool even worked, and it was even more obvious that I'd never even driven a digger. But that didn't stop me hiring one for the weekend for 150 quid and absolutely hacking my garden up to the point of no return, and left it looking like it resembled a pretty shit small scale graveyard. But anyway, now that monstrosity was dug, I went out and got one of these mesh rebars to put at the bottom. The idea was to prop these up with some little bits of brick, then when I mix my sand and cement and then lay a nice thick floor, this mesh should make it stronger. As I was researching this project as I went along, I realised that I hadn't put a damp proof underneath, which ideally would have been one of them big plastic sheets, and then I could have laid all of this slop on top of it, but it weren't the end of the world as I could put this damp proof layer over the top of it now, and then just hope for the best. My idea was to make a nice solid floor, and then I was going to build all the walls out of blocks. Now all these blocks have got holes in, so as I lay them, I can lay them with rebars inside them like I'm doing with this one, where I've drilled the rebar and poked it into the floor, and then I've laid the block over the top of it. Now I can just work my way along all of the walls, making it so there's at least one rebar in each block. And the reason for this is, as the walls start getting higher and the blocks are being staggered as I lay them, when I get the walls to how high I want them, I can then pour a sand and cement mix into every single one of the holes, which, because of the rebar being inside there and the way they've been staggered, should technically make them stronger. Now this is the height of the wall where I now need to drill 2 holes into the blocks. As it's quite a small pool, I'm just going to have 2 little inlet pipes pumping water back into the pool that will come from the plant room that I haven't built yet. For this bit, I'd already bought a couple of swimming pool pipes, so I knew exactly how big I needed to drill these holes into the blocks. So I went out and bought a masonry core drill bit from Tool Station or somewhere like that, and then got 2 of these holes drilled into the blocks, equally spaced out along this right side, because this is the side where I've decided I'm going to have my pipes run along, as there's a nice little space for the plant room down in that corner. So now it's time to install the skimmer, which is basically one of the main pipe sections of the swimming pool. So what this thing does is, when the pool's filled up, the water level is about halfway up this skimmer, and this thing then sucks water out, takes it down to the plant room, cleans it, and then it gets pumped back in. But I'll go more into the plant room in a bit. But overall, if you want a nice clean swimming pool, this bit's probably one of the most important bits. I actually got this off Amazon in the end because I needed it to have quite a wide neck, so the depth was nice and wide so it cleared the blocks, and then poke out the other side so I could then pipe it up. So I laid this in place and got a bed of cement there, made sure it was all nice and level, and then cut and laid some blocks around it so it was in there nice and snug. Now during this whole project, I was always on the lookout for cheap or free stuff that I could use for it, and on Facebook Marketplace I saw a load of these blocks come up for free just around the corner. And as this pool isn't going to be that big, as it's mainly for the kids, I thought, why not put a little bench in the corner, not only because it will be easier for the kids to get in and out so I don't have to have one of them swimming pool ladders, but also so the adults can sit on it and drink Prosecco. So I decided to build a Prosecco bench, and I'm pretty certain after everything that I've built in my life, adding this bench is definitely going to be something that I don't regret. Now by this point I'd built the main shape of the pool, and I won't bore you too much talking about everything around the pool, as I know we're here to see how a pool's built, not all this other stuff. But there was so much to do up here, and doing this completely on my own as a one-man job, this bit was probably the killer and what took most of the time, probably more so than actually building it. All of the mud and earth that I dug was just laying everywhere, so I just spent ages trying to flatten it all out as best I could, as I wanted to section this whole area off from the rest of the garden so it'll have a proper safety lock gated entrance up here so no kids can get in here without me knowing. So I just built a little sleeper wall that sections this area off, and then there'll be some steps through to it, through the gate, into this new pool section of the garden. But anyway, back to the main build. So now I've got this big ugly concrete hole in my garden. I was constantly building rain covers for it to try and keep the rain out, as by this point I had actually gone through a few seasons and it was beginning to drag on a little bit. Building something like this, because it takes so long, you start procrastinating doing other stuff, or there's a little bit of bad weather that's easy to put you off for a few weeks, and then you go off and start literally anything else. It will just take you away from this for a few weeks, and then eventually you're about a year into this project, which is probably where I am about this point. But my next step now was to build a nice plant room, which is basically just a nice little waterproof house to keep all your swimming pool equipment in, like your filter and your pump, so it all stays nice and dry. Again, because this project was taking me so long, I could take my time getting materials and look for freebies to keep the price down. One of them being like this bed frame that I'd built my daughter for when she was little, that she'd now outgrown. At this point, I wasn't really working off any plans or anything. I knew what kind of equipment I was going to be putting in here, like a sand filter and a pump and all that stuff, but also I knew I wanted to have 2 big doors at the front that open up and a roof that comes off easily, just so it's all easy to maintenance, and if anything goes wrong I can always get to everything nice and easy, especially as after a few years you've got to change the sand out of the sand filter, so I definitely wanted the roof to come off, so that'll make it easier to vacuum it all out. I hadn't piped anything up yet, but the plant room was all done, ready for when that all needs to go in there. So now I was on to probably the most important bit of this whole pool build, which is making sure that all the block work, all the walls and the floor and all that stuff is properly watertight, so nothing's going to get through there and ruin it over time. So for this bit I got in contact with a company called Sovereign, who basically do stuff like go round people's houses and do a thing called tanking when they want to sort their cellar out. So if someone gets a new house or they've got an old cellar and they find it all damp, they know what to do and have got all the right stuff to put on the walls and stuff like that to make it into a proper waterproof room again, is the best way I can explain it. But anyway, as I got this far, making sure this was waterproof was important. So they came round and measured up, did all their calculations, and then sent me through a sheet of all the stuff I was going to need. Now this included quite a lot of layers and included something called a Heidi CWP crystalline waterproofing process. I'm not going to lie, the steps included in this, I had no clue what they meant or what they were actually doing. It included things like preparing the block work with some liquid and then doing like a 1mm thick screed and then a slightly thicker layer and then another layer, and then you finish it all off at the end doing this thing called a barrier mortar in the weak points of the pool, like where the floor meets the wall and all of the corners, which is to strengthen it, so when this is filled up with water, the pressure of the water won't push out and crack them weak points. To be honest, I'm not even 100% sure if this is how swimming pools are meant to be done at this stage, but making it waterproof like the same way that a cellar's done made sense to me, so I just went with it. So if you do want to know all the technicalities and layers behind this section, just look up how a cellar's tanked. This section was a proper slog, and not being the best reader in the world, took a lot of brain capacity making sure I did each of these steps in the right order so I didn't screw any of this up. But as I made it to the end, I finally had 4 walls and a floor that was hopefully properly watertight. For the next section I was concentrating on getting all the flooring and the surround done around the pool, which ended up again taking a few months. I was toing and froing for a long time about how I should finish the flooring around here, but I had to keep 2 things in mind, keeping a low budget and the safety of the kids up here. So for now, although it's not my preferred flooring finish type, I decided to do it in artificial grass, just because I know that the kids are going to be bombing it around up here, they're going to have all their mates over, and the last thing I want is them slipping over and smashing their face, then there'd just be claret everywhere and kids' mums having a go at me. So yeah, artificial grass for now, and then as they get older the plan is I'll change it for something nicer and more permanent. But now that was done, I was now ready to try and get this all piped up and connected so there'll be a proper water flow cleaning swimming pool system. Again, because this project took me so long, I could take my time trying to find out how the hell a swimming pool is all piped up, because let's not forget I started this project not knowing how any of this was done. So Google was definitely my friend here, although when I was typing in swimming pool piping diagrams, there were so many on there done differently, it did get a bit overwhelming. And prior to starting this project I did actually do that, is because I don't know if you noticed at the start, before I'd laid the floor, I'd actually included a main drain line, but after reading a couple of horror stories that if you only have one main drain line it can cause a drag down suction for anyone who's in there, so to avoid that you need 2 main drains. I don't know if that's 100% true, but as this swimming pool's so small I decided to get rid of that, and when I do come to empty it I'm just going to use a submersible pump. So now I just needed to find a diagram that doesn't include a main drain. I thought this section was going to be quite hard, but to be honest, after looking at about 1,000 more complex diagrams than I needed, I managed to draw my own one out, which kept it nice and simple. So for my one, where I put that skimmer, that's where the water's going to get sucked out and go along the pipes down into the plant room. First stop's the pump, which is the thing that actually keeps the water moving around this whole system. The pump then pushes the water through to the sand filter, which is just a massive filter that's basically filled field of sand, which takes away little bits of debris and fine particles. The water then gets moved through here into the heater. Let's not forget this is a UK swimming pool build, so I thought a heater is probably quite important. Before finally being pushed back into the pool, all nicely heated along the pipes, and then back into them 2 inlet holes that I drilled earlier. Both the skimmer and the pump do have little debris catching baskets, so anything like leaves, little twigs or other bigger things get caught in them first before going through to the sand filter for the finer things. So as you look after your pool throughout the year, you should keep emptying the skimmer basket and the pump basket every now and then. So now I've got the main skimmer line piped up in a little secret hatch that I made so I could still access it if anything went wrong. I now had to get down this step under some decking and into the plant room.
What a fit.
So now I'd got this skimmer line all connected, insulated, and up into the plant room. I cut 2 holes on the other side of the plant room for the pipe run out to the heater that will sit outside on a concrete pad. So this is where I'll come out of the plant room, turn that corner and into the heater, and then along there, which will go back into the pool. This other pipe's a bypass pipe that will miss the heater. So for any reason like I don't want to use the heater or it's broke, there'll be an isolator switch inside the plant room that will turn off the pipe to the heater. So this water will now bypass the heater and go back into the pool. So now the pipe run from the skimmer is in the plant room. Here's a little talk through of a few bits in here.
So this sucks all the water from the skimmer from the pool, so all the like debris and leaves and stuff is going to get collected in there. So I need to make sure I maintain this quite a lot, so taking it out and emptying it a lot. So I got my first bits in, I came up and then across so I could put the isolator there because it was a bit too short to put it, the run was too short to go there and then in there. So I put it over there, it's off at the minute, so I twist it around and the water can go through. And I put this check valve in which has got like a little spring in it, so when water passes through it, it can't go back on itself. I'm putting a couple of them along the runs anyway, just so, or especially after the heater as well, I think it's quite an important one so it doesn't damage the heater if it goes back on itself. And when it gets to this point, obviously you don't want it to go back on itself anyway, but we'll see how that goes. I don't think you need that there, but I've just whacked one there anyway, it's not going to hurt. I've got the first line from the pool into the pump, now I need to get one out of there, then into this sound filter. It goes in, I've written on here so it's a bit easier for me to remember, but the pump line goes in there and then it will filter through there, come out of here, and then I need to get it down into them bypasses there, and then this is a backwash and waste one, so I need to plumb that outside somewhere so it can get rid of all the backwash stuff when I get round to doing that. But yeah, I need to make them connections into there now.
So it's just a case of following that little diagram now, getting the sound filter all connected and then adding all the sound to it until it finally looks something like this. Out of the pump, into the sound filter, the line back to the pool that will go through the heater first, through either the heater or bypass, and then I just put a little backwash and waste pipe that goes under the plant room, just for when you need to maintain your filter or dump any water out. So the inside looked like this, which then ran outside to the heater on the concrete pad that I'd got a qualified electrician in to put the right feed in for, just so I don't blow the whole thing up at this point. But now the pipes in the plant room was all sorted, it was time to give that big ugly concrete hole a good clean up, ready for the most exciting part, the tiling. Now originally I was just going to use blue swimming pool paint on this, but at this point I was nearly 2 years into this project and it had already took my soul away, so there was no way I was going to finish this off with some cheap looking swimming pool paint. I'd been following bespoke swimming pools on Instagram for some inspiration on this project, so I reached out to them and they suggested that I finish this off with blue iridescent swimming pool tiles, which basically means when I lay them and the sun hits them, the iridescentness, which is like when petrol's mixed with water apparently, so when the sun hits them at different angles, the effect should make it all look nice and sparkly. So anyway, it was now time to put another waterproof cover on it so I could get laying. First thing I did was mark out the start point with a laser level, and it was time to get laying. The adhesive I used was Ardex X77, which is waterproof for swimming pools. I decided to start with the walls, so got this pasted on and then used a little float to just gently push them on to make sure every tile gripped. Then sponge them down, and then after 15 minutes use a little wet brush to just clean out any excess adhesive so there's room for the grout. The corners were pretty hard and took a lot of patience. Every corner of the pool was slightly curved where I added that barrier mortar earlier, so it took a lot of individual tile cutting to get through these tricky little bits. But once all the walls were done, I was onto the Prosecco bench and then it was time for the floor. As you can see, this tiling was a bit time consuming, so to do the whole thing it took me about 2 weeks, as I was only doing it in little 2-hour blocks after work each night. But once all the tiling was on, it was now time to do the grouting, and instead of having harsh white grout lines, Bespoke Swimming Pools recommended that I did it in this Space Blue 172 Mapai grout. When I started putting it on, I was a bit worried that I'd gone too light blue, but as it started drying it began to look bloody beautiful. And now the walls were all done, I was onto the floor. And then once that was in there, I gave it one last little clean up, and that was one swimming pool fully tiled. Now I just had to wait 10 days for it to fully dry out properly before I could start filling it up. From what was actually a crazy idea at the start of 2020, to get from this stage to this stage in summer 2022 was one heck of a 2.5 year journey. And as you can probably tell from this clip to this clip, I've added a few more bits than just the pool up here now, like getting rid of that ugly old shed that was up here and building a nice A-frame style cabin that suited this area better. Anyway, that's for another video though. But I know you're probably thinking, how much did it cost to build my own swimming pool? So because I did take such a ridiculous amount of time over this, I could spread the cost out and just buy bits as and when I needed it, so it wasn't like I did one massive investment at the start. In the description below in this video I'm going to try and link as much stuff as I can that I used, but for the start bit I got all the blocks and the cement that I needed from a local builders merchants, all of the pipework and swimming pool equipment I got from firstpoolsdirect.com, and actually come in a lot cheaper than I thought it would. The heater was £995, the pump was about £300, and the sand filter was about £400. The tanking section to make it waterproof is probably going to be one of your biggest spends. But again, I don't know if you 100% need this bit or if there's a cheaper option here. How you finish your swimming pool, you could do it cheaper with swimming pool paint or even a liner, or you could do some nice tiles that's going to finish it off a bit better. But because I did absolutely everything myself, so there was no labour costs, and I took 2.5 years to do this, so I could spread the cost out, get freebies or Facebook Marketplace bargains where I could, and also this isn't a massive pool, so materials cost wise for me that's going to save money compared to other people's bigger pools. But overall, just for the pool build, mine came between £8,500 and just under £10,000. I would say having no time pressure to get this finished was probably the single most money saving thing that I could have had, because it gave me that time to find bargains and budget as best as I could. But if I would have rushed and tried to build this in like 3 months, I would have been making stupid decisions all over the place and spending silly money just trying to get it done. So was it worth it? Well, the actual build and the time it took me, and as you can see from these videos, I went to some pretty dark places to get this finished. But it's been here 4 years now, and every time summer rolls round and it starts to get hot and I open it up, not to sound too mushy, but watching the kids playing here, having their mates round and getting in here as a family when it's them long summer nights made the whole shit show of building this completely worth it. So would I do this again if I moved house? Yeah, probably. See you next time.